Today, we're going over stories of massive, bloody conflicts that started for the absolute dumbest, most incredibly petty reasons imaginable. The War of the Bucket, the ultimate stolen item. It's 1325 in Italy. Long before Italy was a single country, it was a bunch of rival city-states that absolutely hated each other. Two of the biggest rivals were the cities of Bologna and Modena. They were basically the toxic neighbors of the medieval world, constantly arguing over borders and politics. But things finally boiled over into a massive, full-scale war over the most ridiculous object possible. One night, a small group of soldiers from Modena decided to sneak into the center of Bologna. But they didn't go there to assassinate a leader, and they didn't go there to steal the city's gold treasury. Instead, they walked up to the main city well, stole a standard cheap wooden bucket, and carried it back to Modena just to be incredibly annoying. Bologna was absolutely furious. The city officials felt completely disrespected and demanded that Modena return the bucket immediately. Modena basically laughed in their faces and said no. So, Bologna did what any reasonable 14th century government would do. They declared total war. They mobilized a massive army of 32,000 heavily armed men and marched directly toward Modena to get their plumbing equipment back. Modena scrambled to defend themselves, but they could only put together an army of about 7,000 men. Bologna outnumbered them almost 5-1. It should have been an easy victory, but in a shocking twist, the heavily outnumbered army of Modena absolutely styled on Bologna. In a matter of hours, Modena completely crushed the invading army, chased them all the way back to the gates of their own city, and humiliated them. And just to add the ultimate insult to injury, before the Modena army went back home, they stopped at a well outside Bologna's city walls and stole a second bucket just to flex. Over 2,000 men died in the battle, and Modena kept the bucket. In fact, if you go to Modena today, over 700 years later, they still have the bucket proudly hanging in the city tower. The Pig War, the billion-dollar bacon. It's 1859, and the United States and the British Empire are both claiming ownership of a small, grassy piece of land called San Juan Island, located between Washington State and Vancouver. Since neither side can agree on who owns it, both American settlers and British employees are living on the island at the same time, giving each other the side-eye. One morning, an American farmer named Lyman Cutler walks out of his house and sees a massive black pig happily destroying his garden and eating his prized potatoes. Cutler gets completely enraged, grabs his hunting rifle, and shoots the pig dead on the spot. It turns out the pig belonged to a British guy named Charles Griffin. Cutler actually felt a little bad, so he went to Griffin and offered him $10 for the dead pig. Griffin was furious and demanded $100. Cutler basically told him to get lost, saying the pig shouldn't have been eating his potatoes. The British authorities got so mad that they threatened to arrest the American farmer. Cutler panicked and called the U.S. military for backup. The U.S. Army actually responds. They send a young officer named Captain George Pickett along with 66 heavily armed soldiers to protect the potato farmer. The British governor looks at this and goes completely ballistic. He decides to respond to the 66 American soldiers by sending 3 massive, heavily armored British warships equipped with heavy cannons to surround the island. The U.S. sees the warships and immediately sends a massive naval fleet of their own, plus hundreds of extra soldiers and artillery cannons. For literally months, thousands of troops from the 2 most powerful militaries on Earth are locked in a terrifying, incredibly tense standoff. Cannons are loaded, rifles are aimed, and the entire globe is holding its breath mere seconds away from starting an international world war. All because one guy shot a pig over some root vegetables. Finally, officials from both governments find out what is happening, rush to the island, and basically scream at their commanders, "Are you guys serious?" They negotiate a peaceful stand-down. After a massive, terrifying military escalation, The only actual casualty of the entire war was the pig. The Pastry War, the most expensive croissant. It's 1838 in Mexico. The country's been dealing with a lot of internal political chaos and street riots. During one of these riots in Mexico City, a French pastry chef named Monsieur Remontel claims that a group of Mexican soldiers broke into his bakery, completely trashed the place, and ate all of his pastries. Remontel is furious. He goes to the Mexican government and demands an absolute fortune, 60,000 pesos, as compensation for his ruined cakes. The Mexican government looks at the bill, laughs at him, and completely ignores his request. But Remontel is incredibly petty. He refuses to let it go. He bypasses the Mexican government entirely and writes a highly emotional letter directly to the King of France, Louis Philippe, complaining about his bakery. Now, normally, a king would just throw a letter like this in the trash, but the King of France was actually looking for an excuse to bully Mexico over some unpaid loans, so he decides to treat the baker's complaint with absolute terrifying seriousness. The King of France demands that Mexico pay the pastry chef immediately, and he adds an extra 600,000 pesos on top just for the disrespect. When Mexico says no, France literally sends an entire naval armada across the Atlantic Ocean. The French warships blockade the entire eastern coast of Mexico, completely destroying the country's economy. Then they start heavily bombarding the Mexican coastal fortress of San Juan de Ulúa with explosive artillery shells. Mexico officially declares war on France in return. A massive, bloody conflict erupts. Hundreds of soldiers are killed, ships are sunk, and an entire nation is held hostage by a foreign superpower. The war only ends when the British Navy eventually steps in and forces Mexico to just pay the baker his money so everyone can stop fighting. Imagine an entire naval fleet bombing a country because someone didn't pay their bakery tab. Hey, just want to say thanks for watching. If you want to see more massive empires fighting over groceries and buckets, hit that subscribe button. We'll be back next week telling more epic stories from history.